Oh, what's up, everybody? Welcome back. Today, I want to implement a drag and drop in my image editor. Here is our image editor. We have been using this test case of a meme, Slurpee Bannister, where we have Cersei Lannister sitting on a banister holding a Slurpee, right? And the way our image editor works is we have this like collection of images, and we can apply like transformations to those images, right? So like we cut out Cersei Lannister, that creates like a mask. We like apply a shader that like multiplies the mask by the original image. Bang, bang, boom. We have something like this. Then we can like compose objects together. We can do things like we can drag them. I probably should have left her where she was because I can't undo. We can like rotate her. We can like scale things. And like the idea behind this thing is it's supposed to eventually be a replacement for GIMP that kind of works as like a directed graph of image transformations, right? So you kind of have like this kind of non-destructive behavior where like I know that like this image comes out of like this mask and this path. And if I like go in here and I start like moving these things around, we can see that like we start seeing like orange Slurpee show up here, and we also see orange Slurpee show up here because everything is kind of like downstream applied based off of the like original transformations, right? We can also do things like if we want to like apply like some sort of like transformation, like we want to tint the image in some way. This is just like a user defined shader that sits somewhere. Like if I like open up tint GLSL, this is just like an OpenGL shader that takes in some like mix color and applies the mix. And you just like write this in at runtime. You go, here's a shader. Image editor, could you pick that up, please? And he picks up like the uniforms of these things. And so he goes like, oh, we want some sort of image input. So let's find like some image that we made. And then like he has like a color input here too. And we can like start looking at that, right? We can see how like we can adjust parameters of the shader like inline in the UI. So that's kind of like the idea of this guy. Where we're at right now is we have just recently added this like thumbnail view on the right. So previously we kind of had to scroll through this list of names in order to modify or edit stuff, and we found that it starts to get like kind of difficult to keep track of all the different objects, since every like operation you apply to any image creates like a new image in itself. It's hard to visualize them this way. It's a little easier to visualize them this way, right? We can see, oh, here's the tinted one. And we can see like, oh, here's the cutout mask. Here's this guy, right? Which is great for like switching between them, but it's not so great for if we are trying to like add stuff to this composition. Say we want to add like, I don't know, we want to like add this tinted thing to our composition in some way, right? So we like create like a new composition, and in here we're like, which one of those things was that? Well, they're all called new shader. That's a bad name, and so I have to like remember the name for this thing, or I have to go in here and rename it and say like orange tinted, right? Then I can go into like the composition and add this like orange tinted section here, and then it's like kind of usable. But what would be much nicer would be if I could oopsies, that's a bug, if I could like drag from this drawer directly into here, right? So I just like take this guy. I'm like, oh, I want to add the Slurpee, and I like click the Slurpee and I drag him in. And so that's kind of the benefit of having our own GUI framework, is we can like implement that however we want. And so that's the plan for today. Yeah, I guess another thing that I didn't mention is it's kind of fun to say that we implemented this with like no dependencies. I don't think we'll ever kick OpenGL, although we probably could if we wrote our own GLSL compiler and like did everything on CPU. I don't really want to go that far. We can probably get rid of everything but OpenGL. So one of the things that we did here is we implemented our own GUI framework, which lets us like move that way, and it also gives us the flexibility to like make widgets like this. And we kind of know like the whole stack, so we know how this like thumbnail view works. Yeah, so I want to implement drag and drop. And so I think the steps for today, they're usually a little bit more laid out, but I think the first thing we have to do is like figure out how it's going to work. I have absolutely no idea at this point what we're going to do. And once we've figured out how we're going to implement this thing, then we can fill in the rest of the to-do list and start tackling it. So let's get moving and grooving. Okay, so for some background context, the way that our GUI framework is like set up is that each widget lives for like a long time, right? So like this like application view widget, he lives for like the lifetime of the application. But every frame he like reaches out to the system to like figure out what he wants to do. So maybe a better example is like this slider here. This slider is attached to some parameter of the shader. So the parameter of the shader lives in like app, like objects, and then like below objects is probably like some object by some ID, and then in here we have like param, right? The GUI framework doesn't like know about this structure, but the GUI framework does know how to like draw a float in here. So like what he does is we give him a way to like retrieve stuff. We give him a retriever, and the retriever will hold like a reference to app, as well as probably like this ID, app, and ID. And then when the GUI framework goes, yo, what's like the current floating point value of this guy? He can like figure that out based off these two guys. Probably like parameter ID as well. Param ID. Our GUI framework typically doesn't really know anything about like the actual application. It's kind of like a thing that sits on top of the app. And so he doesn't really know, like when I drag this thing, he doesn't know that he has to like walk into this tree of shit and like do something, right? We instead have the widget emit like a action. So we kind of say like, hey, when I change this, could you please tell me this thing? So we give him like some special thing that says like make action with some like float. And we like get this action back and like apply it later. So we kind of have like two stages there. There's like input retrieval, and then there is like input handling, I guess. Our widgets are typically of the form, they have like a few APIs, but like the main loop is typically like update, which is like, hey, we might have resized, we might have like changed like the things that you're rendering might be different now. Like go fetch whatever you need to fetch and like recalculate your layout and all of that shit. Then we render probably, I don't remember which order these two come in, and like handle input. Okay. So that's kind of like the background of kind of how our thing works. We have these long-lived widgets. They reach out to the system, they grab what they got to do, and then they like hand off actions to the system that will be performed. And then later in the next update, they'll like see that those updates happened. So all of that to say, in the context of drag and drop, what are we going to do? Because what's kind of weird here is like, I don't think drag and drop fits into this, right? Say I like grab this Slurpee and I want to like place him into this composition or this composition. How do those two things get linked together? I guess like you don't really know what you are doing until you drop, right? So you like pick up this guy, you drag him over here, and if you only know that you're like adding him to this composition of objects, once I've dropped him here, theoretically there could be like another place where we could drop him where he would do something else. Like within this widget, I might be able to like reorder these guys by dragging them around, right? I like grab him down here, everything shovels to the left, and then he's like over here now. Maybe, right? So I guess like on the drag side, okay, let's ideas. on the drag side is literally just like some sort of like source ID question mark. Like we can remember that like we don't have to manage any of the state here ourselves, really. Like from the sidebar's perspective, say I want to like reorder these guys. I like drag him down, bring him down here and let go. The thumbnail widget is not the guy who's responsible for doing that reordering. The thumbnail widget is going to like request that some action happens, right? So widgets request that some action happens. So if I were to add him to the composition, I would drag him over here, I would let go, and presumably the composition widget would want to say like, hey, I know that when somebody drags an image over me, that I want to add that to my composition. So like on drop, composition widget asks the app to add some object. Okay, that seems pretty reasonable, which means that all this guy really needs is he needs like some way to identify what was dropped onto him. So we need some sort of like drop source, I guess, is kind of what we're getting. And that drop source, in our context, it would be like an image ID, right? We would say like, hey, I want to add image 4 to this composition. Okay, seems kind of reasonable. And so that means like all we need is we need like guys who support being dragged to write down somewhere what they are. Yeah. Yeah, that's not crazy, right? So like we can have like somewhere we have a drag source ID. And so in our case, that will literally just be like object ID or image ID, I guess, in words. Then do we even need a like can our like app widget or like app widget, can he just like check input state for drop? Yes, probably. Probably our input handler can like flag drag and drop in some way. I guess he just has to check for mouse released. He checks for mouse released and then also checks like drag source. And all he has to do is be like, okay, yeah, I got the thing. Okay, so we need to like add some sort of like drag source like memory somewhere, right? So like we're gonna give some object to both the sidebar and to this guy, and when I start the drag in the sidebar, he's gonna write down who I dragged, and then when I drop him here, he's gonna just check that. That seems reasonable. I guess when we click on these things, it means that on the sidebar, I don't know that I'm trying to select an image until I have released the mouse. So we need, at some point, we need to select on release in sidebar. We need to add some form of like add drag source. We need to look for drop on composition. Okay. And is that it? I guess we also will need to like render the drag as it's happening, right? So like usually when you drag stuff, you kind of see like he's kind of held under the mouse. This is doing not what I would do. He's not holding like where I clicked, but we're gonna have to do something like render maybe like semi-transparent, like render drag thing, right? So someone is, I guess, like when the drag starts, we probably like create the like held widget, right? So we're gonna like basically make an image that sits under the cursor and floats around with it. So this is gonna have to be like live on probably like another layer. We're probably gonna have like a stack of layers that all sit on top of each other, and this is like the drag and drop layer that allows us to be like that will like this guy will like track the mouse maybe and like render the widget that we gave him underneath the mouse as it moves. That seems reasonable. Another option is we already have like an overlay layer for when we do stuff like we click on this the color thing here. This pop-up is like rendered on another layer. We call it like the pop-up layer, and we could make it so that pop-ups have like handles. But I think doing like a separate drag and drop layer will be easier. I think. So let's do it that way. So we'll say like make drag and drop layer, and then we'll like render dragged widget to DND. Okay. I think that's pretty reasonable. That doesn't seem crazy. Yeah. I think that's fine. And so like, is this in order? We probably want to like identify drag in sidebar is probably the first step. Then we add that drag to the drag source, look it up on drop, make the drag and drop layer for rendering, and render it. Yeah, sure. Blaze it. That seems fine. Okay, cool. Cool. Let's do that. I'm sure that maybe putting more than 10 minutes of thought into this might result in like a better final answer. But I'm kind of down to just kind of wing it, and maybe we'll find out that like it feels kind of shit, and then we'll come back to it later, and we'll change our minds. But for now, let's do it that way. Okay. So the place we want to start is in the drawer. So in the drawer, what we do is for each thumbnail that shows up, we create like a thumbnail that's just kind of like an image that like renders from some texture. We create like a widget for that. Then we like put him in like a highlight frame. Maybe we should leave this open so that we can like use it for reference. We put him in like a highlight frame. So actually, can we load? I would rather do this. Load save JSON. Give him a sec. There we go. Okay, so like we have the image that's displayed here itself is like the thumbnail. Then he's wrapped by a frame, which is like shows which one is highlighted. The purple and white highlight there. That's the frame. Then we like clamp it to make sure that he doesn't like exceed some size, because the thumbnail by default will try to like expand to fill whatever size is available. So this box is basically like, yo, don't go bigger than this, please. Like stay in here. And then we put him in some sort of like clickable object, right? So by default, like an image doesn't like emit some event. So clickable is kind of like our way of saying, take this like widget and just when you click on it, do a thing. We'll just add our own click on top. And so I guess this is where like the drag and drop stuff should go, right? So instead of this guy being a clickable, he's going to be a click and draggable, I guess. And we're going to assign an action to him where I think this is the only place this is used, so we can just kind of hack this up for now and fix it later. So we're going to maybe change the behavior of this guy first, and then figure out what he should be called later. Probably no longer named clickable. Clickable, right? So he is going to, first of all, we know that we have to wait for mouse release in order to disambiguate between a drag and drop, right? We kind of said that. So now these things only, if I click and hold and then release, maybe it should be if on release, if the mouse down location and current mouse pause are in the current same spot. Yeah, something like that. I guess like probably drag is detected by some like movement over a certain amount when the mouse is down. Right, we probably, if we want to like render the thing on top, we probably want to render it on top, like the like preview thing that you're dragging should probably be only rendered if you drag maybe outside the bounds of the widget. Yeah. Yeah, something like that. Okay, so we want to say click if mouse pressed and released within bounds of widget. Drag if mouse pressed within bounds of widget and released elsewhere. Or drag if we press in the bounds of the widget and mouse is currently out of bounds. Okay. And that's it. Those are the two options. Sure. So that means both of these are kind of tied to the fact that we pressed within the input bounds. So we can say, like, if this did not happen, we're donezo. We don't have anything to do. Then we say if input bounds, if we release the mouse, if we input bounds contains the current mouse position, mouse, what do we call it? Mouse pause. That's a weird naming. Mouse down location, mouse pause. Those should be kind of like equivalent in some way. But if this is like that, then what? Then what? Then we do nothing. Then we're like, yeah, we're doing nothing. So if this does not contain the mouse pause, then we are in dragging state. Do drag stuff. Else, if mouse, otherwise if we released, we emit a click. Okay. Sure. Let's try that just to make sure that it doesn't like do anything like fucking stupid. Like absolutely brain dead dumb. Okay. So now if I drag off and then release, it does not consider it a click. But if I click and then release within the bounds of a thumbnail, it considers that. Okay, cool. Okay, so now we just have to identify the drag. So someone somewhere. Okay, let's I guess we'll just say std debug print dragging. Let's just see if this is correctly flagging this. So he's calling himself dragging here. We need some sort of like way to indicate that this is changing so that we can see it. So can we do like global var count is 0, and then we'll do like this, and then we'll do global count plus equals 1, and then we should be able to notice when it stops. Probably. Okay, so I like click on here, dragging, stops, dragging, stops, dragging, stops. And maybe we actually want it to keep dragging when we're over if we are in a drag, right? Because like if I go into dolphin, it would be weird if I dragged this and it like stopped dragging if I hovered back over, right? That'd be fucking strange. So let's do that where we maybe like consider ourselves in a certain state, idle or dragging maybe. And here, how do we do that? So we probably switch on our state. Probably. And if we are idle, we do what we were doing before. But if we ever leave the bounds of this thing, then we go into the dragging state. Yeah. Yeah. Self state is equal to dragging. And then if we ever release the mouse, we make sure that we like restore ourselves back into the idle state. But I guess that only has to happen if we're dragging. So if the mouse released, we like flag. I guess it's like self state is equal to idle. Yeah. Sure. And we said earlier when we were like designing this that the actual drop logic is going to be handled by the other side. The widget that we drop on will be the one who handles that. But this side will probably handle like the fact that we are rendering a widget somewhere, or maybe we just don't have to do anything. I'm not really sure. Addison, thanks for the prime, much appreciated. We'll have to think about this a little bit. I don't really know what this is going to do, but that means that we're going to do this printing stuff in the dragging over here. And we should be able to see this kind of behavior makes sense now. So we need our state to be initialized to idle. Okay. Yeah, okay, so this thing never stops until I let go. Then he continues. Here, if I release in here, I drag around inside him and release, he still counts. It's only when I leave this thing the dragging starts, and it never stops. And then I guess I should also check that if I start dragging and then drag off, that like it doesn't consider itself a click, which it shouldn't, right? So I'm like, I've selected this guy and I drag this one over and let go, or I let go. Yeah, no, this is never, once a drag starts here, it doesn't try to like select that object, which is good. Yeah, okay, cool. I'm gonna put a fix me on here. I'm not sure I'm like the biggest fan of this logic. We might want to check like if the mouse is moving or something. Ah, no, it's probably fine. It's probably fine. Never mind. Okay. So that's identify drag in sidebar. We have identified it. And now we need to like write down that that drag is happening somewhere. So we kind of have this like global widget state somewhere. Like all of our widgets kind of live in one structure. They don't have to, but they do. Like, how do I say this? You can construct them outside of this thing, but like typically you would construct them through this like global structure that holds everything. And in here, it seems pretty reasonable to me like drag source. And this is literally just going to be, maybe this doesn't have to live here. I'm just going to put this in main for now, to be honest. I'm just going to put this on the stack in main, and we can figure out where he lives later. Because I think that our usage will kind of reveal how this is supposed to end up. So can we do something that's like drag source? And maybe we say that this lives next to our UI actions, like all of the things that this guy can emit as like requests of things that the UI does. Maybe he lives here and we say like pub const drag source is equal to object ID. I guess we don't really have any complex behavior here. We know that like our drag source will always be this. In which case he doesn't even have to live here. Yeah. Drag source is a maybe nullable object ID? Maybe? Sure. And then when we construct our GUI, we just have to like pass this guy along. Svimp object ID. That seems kind of reasonable. And so that means that when we construct our image drawer, we probably pass that guy along as well. Probably. And it's not it's not a pointer to an object ID. It's a pointer to a optional object ID. Because we have to be able to set it to null as well. To say nobody is doing anything right now, sir. Uh-huh. And then I guess that guy gets kind of stashed in the sidebar for a little bit. It's a pointer to a nullable, not the other way around. So it's this way. Do we get it backwards everywhere else too? No. Okay. So then he writes it down here that he's got that guy. And when we construct our clickable, surely this guy just gets passed here as well. Which I think it needs one more layer of writing down. Drag source is object ID. Yep. And then when I make the thumbnail factory, I pass it along. Okay. So now the question is what the fuck does the clickable thing do when he gets that? He's like a generic GUI object, right? So GUI objects don't know object IDs even exist. They have no idea. We're just saying like, I'm gonna write this thing down. I don't think that they actually, I think I'm wrong, actually. I don't think they take the drag source. This doesn't live here. This is the wrong place. I take it all back. Undo, 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 undo. Undo, undo, undo. Then it was root.sig. Undo, 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 undo. Here we still need this thing for sure, right? In main. We have the drag source. But I think actually all we do is our UI actions. One of the things that we can do is like set drag source. That seems kind of reasonable to me. So then we don't have to change any APIs on this side. Clickable, he's just going to get like a drag action. Drag start action, maybe. Uh-huh. And when he transitions to the dragging state, he's going to return action is equal to self drag start action. And all we have to do is write that thing down. Yeah. Yeah. Unused function parameter. Then in main, all we have to do is if we like notice that we got this request, we say that our drag source is equal to like the value. Okay. Setting drag source to this guy. Let's see what happens if we do that. Sros. Yeah, true. Sros. Dude, that's 2 letters off. That's pretty bad. Drag source. Okay. So it means that when we construct our clickable in the image drawer thing, he says, hey, if you drag, we say set drag source is equal to object ID. Was noticing when he would notice that? Probably never, to be honest. Reading's definitely not my strong suit. I'm much more of a like vibes-based reader. Right? So I'll like kind of like look at a paragraph and just kind of like gloss over it and just be like, I don't even think I'm reading like words, to be honest, often. I think it's like I'm just kind of like reading like shapes and I'm just guessing what the shapes mean. It's really bad. My reading is like not good. We're just going off the vibe. Yeah, exactly. Okay. So now make GUI. Yeah, we don't need to pass this here anymore. True. Okay, so if we run this, we should see like set drag source one time when we drag off this guy. Oh, but he's still got that dragging log, which is fucking annoying. So let's we don't have to do this anymore. We don't have to do that login. Dump, bump, bump. Okay, yeah, so we can see set drag source is value 6, value 9, value 10, value 0, value 0, value 1, value 5. Yeah, okay. So that seems to be working. Now, we should probably clear it on release. So we probably want like drag start and stop action. That's kind of how I'm feeling right now. It's kind of what fits. I don't know if this is ideal. But our drag stop action now just also has to be passed in. Start, stop, and then on release, we emit the drag stop action. Okay, so then we add that to one of the like many things that we can do. Set drag, or like stop drag. Yeah, because we have no guarantee that like another object will notice that. But really like this widget is also not guaranteed to be able to send this because like we kind of support like one action per frame. So like presumably the widget that's like the drop target will be like, yo bitch, I've got some shit to do, right? And so this guy also saying clear the drag state, he's not going to be like be able to successfully say that, which is kind of weird. So either we have to fix that or we can work around it. Working around it seems great. We could do like a global, just like on main, in main, our main loop, we can just be like, if the like mouse was released this frame, like after we handle all of the like UI actions, we'll say cell like drag source is equal to null. So we'll just kind of like handle this externally. Maybe. I'm gonna just note that like this feels like it should be automatic somewhere. So maybe this gets like, instead of being like in main of our application, maybe this gets like pushed down a layer into like the guy who runs the GUI or something. But for now we'll do it here. I'm gonna put a fix me so I don't lose that. But now, if we were to, maybe we log here too. Drag finished. Let's kind of just make sure that that kind of behaves somewhat sanely. Okay. So drag finished, drag finished, drag finished. And it's actually kind of anywhere I click, no matter what, he says drag finished. But in reality, like, it doesn't matter if we're like clearing that, setting that variable to null once a frame, right? We'll live. We'll fucking live. So I think that's fine. I think that's fine. I think that we have identified the drag source successfully. So let's look for drop. So that's going to live in our app widget. And that means that our app widget surely needs to look at the drag source. So maybe that just gets passed into him on initialization. Maybe. Pointer to optional object ID. And since our app widget is living like pretty like outside of, how to say this? Some widgets are part of like the GUI framework and they don't know that like the application even fucking exists, right? But some widgets do. They know what they're part of. So like the app widget knows that he's rendering the application. And so he's allowed to use object IDs just fine. And so I guess like we don't have to overcomplicate things. We can just kind of slap this in here and see what happens. So object ID. And he's just going to write down here the drag source. Pointer to null. I don't think I ever write this that way, which is confusing. Okay. So when we handle input on this guy, we do try set input state. And here, I guess we need to, okay, what are we doing in here? We have a bunch of like the app actually manages its own input state as well for things like dragging elements around the composition and rotating them and scaling them and stuff. So this is like kind of like a weird melding of things. Also because like the app existed before the GUI framework, so we had to do all of this like input tracking originally, and then like merging these two things together, it kind of made sense to just let them keep doing that instead of like moving it all into this widget. But the question becomes, is like whose responsibility given that? Is it to identify the drop? Seems kind of like the widgets. So I guess we can just kind of do this. So we can check if drag source I guess we're like set like drop drop ID, drop object, set insert add object to composition. Like what is like the play here? It's like the app wants to do something with the object that was dropped in here, and depending on what thing he's showing, he's probably going to want to do something different. We could like we could handle it directly here, where we could say like, you know, what is like the selected object? We could like extract some information about this guy. So we could be like, if the selected object is a composition, if selected object data is equal to composition, then we can ask the app add to composition of this ID. That's like something we could do. Now, whether or not I think that's okay, like if this is where I believe this belongs, I'm a little less convinced. I'm gonna put like a fix me on here and say like, should this live inside app? I'm not so sure. But I think that this will actually work. So when we construct the app widget now, we need to pass in the drag source. And then here, that means we have to pass in the drag source. Which means that here we, this is a pointer to a nullable object ID, which means that this guy needs to have object ID. And then we go back to passing this into UI construction here. Okay. So this is mad because I need to dereference this pointer, probably. And add to composition. He gets a composition index back, but I don't really give a fuck about that. Okay, so I guess we have to look at a composition. Okay. Okay. That's kind of working. That's kind of working. Now, these guys are not showing up here because we have to regenerate the images. So actually, this is actually much more clear now what this should do. Actually, like way more clear. This should emit an input action to be we should ask the main loop who usually handles this shit to add the object to composition. So we should just be like, can we just return an optional UI action here? That might be easier. So we usually return null. And then I guess we should do this at the end. Way down at the bitty bottom. Uh-huh. And then this kind of goes back to the way it was. And then I guess we could actually just do it here, and we could set a return value here. We could be like, var ret is a nullable UI action is equal to null. Here we set return to like add to composition or something. Yeah, okay, okay. Yes. And then we don't have to do anything else. Cool. This guy returns ret here, and at the end we return ret here, and then this thing we copy pasted goes away. Action is this, and we say if action return A, and then otherwise return empty. Sure. And this guy's mad because it's action equals A, like this. Okay. Let's see what that does. Let's see what that does. Okay, so we go to a composition, we drag this guy, we let go, that works. And now that thing is actually showing up here, I believe. So we show like this guy, we get new mask shows up in the widgets. Because like what happens is main has to request that like this widget list is regenerated every time we add or remove something from it. So it makes sense to go through that path, which is kind of hype. Kind of hype. Okay. Cool. So I think that at some point we might want to look at like drop at position. Like we should probably like add object at location, the composition, right? If I drag and drop this guy like this, it's weird that he's just centered. But maybe like that's kind of the way it was before, but like maybe that's something that we want to do later. Maybe not today, but just something that like I think should be done. Okay. Look for drop on composition. So I think that's kind of handled. And so I guess the actual thing to do now is just make sure that we like have some sort of visual indication that we're dragging. So whose job is that? Whose job is that? We kind of have like widget state, it lives in like GUI. We have clickable lives in GUI, which is the guy who like indicates the drag. It seems like this guy is in charge. The guy who like initiated the drag is in charge of creating the widget and adding it to the drag layer. So probably clickable holds a like drag layer that's owned by the widget state. Probably. And then the drag layer has to like render. I wonder if clickable just like gives him the widget that he's holding. Maybe. So like this guy, this is probably shared state. Probably all instances of clickable are kind of pointing to the exact same drag layer. So we kind of have this pattern where we say there are things that like each widget owns individually, but there's also things that like all widgets point to. And so I think a drag layer is like reasonable to stick here. We're gonna have to make a drag layer. Layer. So can we maybe do something like drag layer is import drag layer. Maybe this is just as a raw class. The drag layer is going to have to hold a widget, which means it's going to have to be a generic type, which means that he has to be lowercase here. And so we have to make this thing now. So this is wherever we were writing drag layer here. This is going to be dewey.drag layer. And this drag layer is going to be associated with some like our specific action, which means that this is a generic type here. Yup. Yeah. I don't know if we have ever done this before. That feels kind of strange to me. But our widget state does know that he is associated with some actions. There's no reason that we can't hold it that way. Okay, cool. Edit source, GUI source, drag layer, sig. And we're going to make a pub function drag layer who takes in... I keep putting a fucking OU in there. I don't know what I'm fucking smoking. So this is something like this. Yup. And we don't know what he does yet, so we're just going to kind of do this. We'll figure it out later. Okay. So now this guy's going to take in one of these guys. He's going to be like shared is one of these guys. And then we're going to write that down here. So we're going to say our clickable widget holds onto some shared state that everybody owns. And it means that now when we switch into the dragging state, we can give the drag layer... Bro's making a Dungeons and Dragons layer. Thanks, Mug. What's up? What's up? No, actually, drag and drop. But Dungeons and Dragons would be kind of cool too. Lair layer, I think, not layer. I guess you could have Dungeons and Dragons layers too, as in like floors of the dungeon. I've never played Dungeons and Dragons. I never really got it. When you play video games and they have words on the screen, spam the A button to get through them as fast as you can, which makes me think I'm not really much of a D&D guy. You know, like the story is not really what I'm here for. I also never played D&D. It's also not my thing. Yeah, okay, makes sense. Kamuna, thanks for the prime. Much appreciated. 6 months already, time's flying. Yeah, dude, it's going crazy. Things are definitely... I was like, I'm going to stream for a year, and it's definitely been like a lot more than that. And time is just flying. What about tabletop version? I don't know. I would have to think about it. But we have to focus. We're doing drag and drop here. It's much more important than Dungeons and Dragons. Much more. So if we're going in the dragon state, we must have to like look at the drag layer, which I don't know. Oh, this needs to be one of these. That's why. These shared things are a function of that take a generic type. So now this drag layer is resolving, and we should be able to be like set drag like set. Maybe we just set, and we set it with some widget. Sure. So we're like, here you go. Take a little peek skis at our little widget guy. I like story games but don't want to have to imagine the story, so I just do video games. Nice. Jamarcano, thank you for the prime. Much appreciated. And I guess that kind of means that in our main section, when this guy who's responsible for turning off the drag source must also be responsible for like taking the drag layer and like resetting him or something. This doesn't exist yet, but we'll figure it out. Okay, so this guy has some sort of like drag layer, our like global widget state. And that means that we have to construct him somewhere. Uh-huh. And right now he doesn't have any init param, so this is fine. And then we saw that we needed that like shared state for our clickable, which means that we need some clickable shared in here. GUI clickable shared. And this guy is going to have to hold the drag layer. Uh-huh. Okay, cool. So that kind of makes sense. That makes some amount of sense. And so now this drag layer needs to, we need to implement set and reset on him. So we said that set takes in a widget. Like this, which means that we need like GUIs import GUI, and we need widget is GUI widget. Okay. Yeah. Sure, and then in here we just do this for now, just to make sure everything compiles. Const self is this. Okay. So does that compile? No. What's he mad about? Our clickable needs to pass in our clickable shared state, which means that there's some piping we gotta do to get everything in the right place. Annoying, but we'll live. We will live. Who constructs this? This guy needs to be associated with UI action in this context. Thumbnail factory needs clickable shared is self refs clickable shared, and then wherever this guy's defined, we make a clickable shared. That comes from clickable, then someone must assign this guy somewhere here. So we say clickable shared is clickable shared, and that means that has to get passed into the constructor of this guy. Like this. Which means that when we construct the image drawer, we need to pass that in from the widget state. There. All right. Does that compile? It might. It never does. UI action. Actino. Okay, that compiles and hopefully runs. Hopefully. Yeah, so nothing has broken. It does get mad when I try to drag and drop onto something that's not a composition, which is kind of funny. But we will live. Actino, pronto. Okay. So now all we have to do is render the widget in the drag and drop layer. So what the fuck is this guy gonna do? Like, surely he needs to keep track of the mouse position? Is this guy a widget? He might be. Where is this guy gonna get rendered? I think like our root render function is in this like GUI runner function, and we like step this guy and we call update. We call set input state. We call render on like some root widget. I guess the drag and drop layer could just be a widget in like a stack, which is what we do with the overlay. What do we do with the overlay? Whatever we do with the overlay, we should just do the same thing with the drag and drop layer. I guess maybe when we do like our UI construction, do we add it here? Overlay, pop up, widget factory. What the fuck? Overlay. Is this guy called anywhere? Aha! When we make the runner, we take like a root widget and we throw the overlay on top. And so here we can just throw the drag layer on top as well, which means that the drag layer has to be a widget. He has to be for this to work. Okay. That seems reasonable. So this is going to return a widget, and that means that we need to implement like the widget interface for this guy. You're a widget, Harry. It's so stupid, but still somehow kind of funny. So we know that these like drag layer widgets, they're not going to do any like input on the widget itself. He is going to only render the child widget. He's only using him as like a way to have something to look at, something pretty. So some of these APIs can be ignored. Like set, focus, and reset, these guys surely don't fucking matter. Maybe reset should like clear the drag state. Input state is going to have to be looked at because this is how we're going to know where the mouse is and where to render the dragged object. Update, this is used for tracking the window size, so we are going to have to implement this as well. We're going to have to implement these four. So I guess these will go below because these are kind of like private implementation details about this guy. And we delete to here, we jump to here, we paste, we go back, we delete a couple words, we go to the end, we go like this, and then we go again. We need some defines here. Pixel bbox is pixel bbox. Pixel size is pixel size. And I think it's input state and input response. Input state. Oopsies. Input state and response. All right. Is that everything? Looks like it. Okay, so our vtable, widget vtable is, this guy implements widget action vtable. Boom, simple. Damn, at this point you should save the macro under commando. But I mean, like, it doesn't take that long to do it again. I don't know, I'm not super shocked about it. Put a dot here, jump to the colon, put an equals, go back, yoink to the end of the word, word, self dot paste, delete to the end, comma. Ah, fuck. Oh, that's not good. I fucked up the macro recording. We'll live, though. Kind of worked anyways. No, you do it for every widget in there a lot. Yeah, but it's not the end of the world. I don't think that I should have, I don't know. It takes like, like 5 seconds? 10 seconds? It's not the end of the world. Maybe having like a widget template would save me some time, but whatever. Whatever. Okay, so we are going to hold some widget. We are not always going to have a widget, right? So inner is going to be an optional widget action. This seems kind of reasonable. Then on set, we literally just say self widget is equal to widget, or inner, I guess we called it, which gets us away. Reset, we just say self inner is equal to null. So that kind of handles those APIs. Was curious if you know about Jai at all. I've heard of it. I have not like looked at it much myself. I've seen one of the guys we like to raid, Kuju. He writes a lot of Jai, and so I'm like I'm familiar with it in like that I've seen, I've looked at it, but I don't really like know it in detail. I've never written it myself. Okay. So I guess our size of this thing, we probably, our drag layer wants to fill the window. Surely, right? Surely. Because we want to be able to drag everywhere where there's stuff. So this is just return self size, where we say our self is a self pointer that is, pointer cast, align cast from the generic type. Update, it's literally just like reset this to be the available size. That seems straightforward. We don't need to try to do any like frame. We don't have like any animation state to handle, so no worries about this like time between frames. Jai's promising. Odin's like seems good as well. Yeah, I've heard good things about both of them, but I'm happy where I am for now. But maybe that's what do you call it? Like ignorant. But whatever. I don't mind. I don't mind being ignorant for now. I'm happy. I'm very content with Zig. So I'm gonna keep writing it. Okay. So render, we're going to have to like put this widget somewhere. So this widget is going to live at some location, probably where the mouse is, right? Almost certainly. So that means that we're probably actually going to have two things associated with this guy. We're going to have the widget. So this is data now, and we're going to have its location. So this is a, maybe just like an X and Y. Maybe something that's just like this. So now it's self inner is equal to let's think about this. So other widgets are going to set the drag layer. They're going to call in their set input state function. Here you are. And we don't know the size, we don't know like where the mouse is until our set input state is called. But we do know, we can just always write down the mouse location. We can always write down the last mouse location and then store this as like offset from mouse. I like that. I like that. So this is going to be a last mouse X, I guess. I don't think we have like a XY defined for this, so I'm just going to do this for now. I think we have a defined for this in like floating point, but I don't really know why we do it in floating point. Probably because GLFW gives us the mouse position in floating point, but it should be integer because pixels are pixels. You know, I don't think I really care about like sub pixel mouse accuracy. You can't see it, so like why would I think about it? You know. Okay, so every frame, we are going to change the mouse position. So we're gonna look at the mouse position and we're gonna say like self. We need to have a pointer to self. Self last mouse X is this. Probably int from pointer, or int from float. I'm pretty sure this is a float. Pretty sure. Yep. And then Y with Y. We do not care about the widget bounds or input bounds. We literally just do not give a flying fuck. Okay, so then when somebody sets this guy, we are going to say that the widget is the widget, right? And we're going to like try to figure out our current mouse offset from the widget itself. So it means that whoever calls this is going to like is going to tell us where they clicked on the widget. Probably. Right, so we clicked somewhere on here, and then we'll just slap that in here. And we should just call these offs X and offs Y. We should just give these like names that indicate what they are. Okay. That seems straightforward. Then all we have to do is like render the thing at that location. So is it our responsibility to update the widget? Probably not. I'm going to put a note on here on the widget itself and say like, note, this is expected to be a copy, to be a like reference to an existing widget. This means that we are copying. This means that we do not own the widget ourselves and are not responsible for doing things like setting its, like updating it or setting its input state. And I think that's fine. I think that's fine. Like, we're kind of just looking for like a picture to render. Which means that, like, theoretically, we could actually render it once and like move it into a texture and move it around. However, I don't think that it trivially works that way. Okay, so we'll just do it like this for now. It's fine. If we have some data, we do some rendering. Otherwise, we're done. There's nothing to do if we have no widget render. We are looking for probably its bounds are going to be something related to its like its offsets. We're going to say that like top left is equal to our mouse x, or this is left, and this is top. So we take the mouse y minus the offset, and then we get the widget size. Widget size, and this is where it's going to live. So we have widget size, width, and widget size height are going to be the right and bottom side. So we have like inner bounds is something like this. I think we actually don't care about our widget bounds because I think that the mouse coordinates are in window space. So we don't have to worry about this. Do you work? Are you a full-time streamer? I think probably neither is the most reasonable answer here. But I don't work. Unless you consider this work. In which case I do work. I definitely code. Okay. So here is bounds. Sure. And so then we can just call render on that guy and see what happens? Maybe? That'd be kind of hype if that worked. I don't really see why it wouldn't. Well, because it doesn't compile. That's pretty important. So these guys have to be default initialized. This guy's missing a name field. Drag and drop. This guy's mad because he needs to return something. He's gonna return, I don't give a fuck. Don't make me do whatever you want. Don't make me do any work. Excuse me, sir, I'm busy. This guy needs to tell us where the mouse is relative to the top left of the widget. So we have our mouse paws and we have the widget bounds. So I think it's just like widget bounds top. It's like, okay, mouse x as an i32 is an int from float of input state mouse paws x. Get the same for y. The x offs is the mouse x minus the widget left, and the y is for y and top. And then we pass this in here. Sure. Seems kind of reasonable. This is now pointlessly discarded. What are we looking at now? That compiles. I wonder if it works. That'd be so fucking sick. I give it 85%. That's my bet. Nothing's happening. The whole thing is frozen. Whole thing is fucked. So what's happening here? Are we like cranking memory? Like, what are we doing? Let's just give him a little peeksy. So if I... Really weird. The drag and drop layer, I think, is eating mouse input. Oh, fuck. Oh, that's a problem. So I think the way this works is I think the stack widget tries to check if something ate input, item consumes input, by checking if the thing contains the mouse position. So probably if nothing's in the drag and drop layer, we probably just set the size to 0 and that probably fixes this problem. It's kind of like a fucking gross workaround, but maybe it works. Maybe. So if self data is not equal to null, we return the size. Else, we return an like a invisible fucking drag and drop layer. Okay. Wait, that's kind of hype. Okay, so when I let go, I have to like click again before I can do anything. And it's not really like finding the drag target successfully. It kind of makes me think that mouse release here should... So what's happening here? We expected that when we release on the drag layer, that he would... When we release the object, he like is considered a mouse release on the destination spot. But we, as the drag layer, consume the mouse release, which is fucking annoying. Which means like this size trick is like not working. Unless we just always, can we just fucking lie? What if we just lie? That could work. If we just always say we're 0 size and we just are not 0 sized, that's kind of funny. I don't know how I feel about that. Okay. I'm just gonna say like lie to stack widget and widget so that it thinks we cannot consume input. The stack widget does not, the root stack widget does not scissor, so we are free to just draw outside our widget bounds. This is totally broken. This feels pretty broken. This feels like we are exploiting a bug or optimization, but maybe it's fine. I have to think about it. Okay. Cool. So that works. Whether or not it's good, we will, you know, up for debate. But at the very least, if we go to the composition, we drag this guy in here now, it's kind of sick. Right? That's kind of fucking hype. Like I'm kind of down. And now I think that the only thing that I don't like here is that wait, the fuck? Our drop needs to check where it's going. That's a problem. So on release here, we need to check if input bounds contains mouse position. And yeah, I guess it's like, ew. I hate triple nested ifs, but that feels right for now. So that should make it so that when I drag something and release it not on the composition, now it doesn't consider itself part of it. Cool, but no, okay, what I was actually gonna say is I don't like the fact that the mouse offsets should be determined from where I started the drag, not from like where the mouse is when the drag starts, right? Because it always kind of ends up like on the side of the widget. but it should be where we put the mouse down. So on clickable, this thing should just be using the mouse down location. And we know at this point that this is a valid thing, so we can dereference the optional. There we go, that feels pretty good. Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with that. So you like click here, you slowly drag off. When you leave the bounds, it pops up, and then you slap it in here. Not fucking bad, man. Not fucking bad. That's way better. That's like that's way better. Like if we just like nuke this composition, we remake it. Like, so we say like, let's take our Bannister, our Cersei Lannister, and our Slurpee, and then let's kind of put her on the Bannister. And bring the Slurpee down. And I guess we don't need this anymore. Yeah, I mean, that's not bad. That's like way, way, way nicer than it was before. And then if we want to like cut out her hand, we then look here and we like draw a path around her hand to like put it on top of the Slurpee. I think that it looks better when it's like this, actually, if I remember correctly. So we go back to the composition and we drag our hand in there. Oh, that's actually like so much better. That is fucking sick, dude. Yeah, that's not bad at all. That also works as a preview window. Yeah, a little bit. I think that I want to get something more advanced there, but yeah, that's pretty fucking sick. I will take that. That went a lot smoother than I expected it to, which is kind of sick. It's kind of nice when like I feel like we put like a lot of effort into this GUI framework up front, and now like we're starting to see kind of like the dividends of that work. Like things like this drawer, I think is like would be very difficult to implement in another GUI framework, or at least like a lot more work than I know how to do. Something as simple as adding this drag and drop is now like super easy. We probably want a way to cancel it, huh? We probably want like a right click to cancel. But overall, I think I'm okay with this for now. We call it there. That was, yeah, way nicer than I thought it would be. Cool. So thanks for watching, guys. If you liked what you saw, we stream most days at around 12:30 Pacific time to 4 o'clock Pacific time. Today was super short. It's 3:30 now, and we started an hour and a half ago, but typically we were going to be more along those lines. If you like what you saw, please consider supporting. If you subscribe on Twitch or Patreon or join on YouTube, you get access to like the happy hour VODs, which is like there's the 12:32 segment. Typically, we're working on stuff that I don't think is worth making a YouTube video out of, and then the 2 to 4 segment is typically an attempt to make something that we can post to YouTube. But some things are like not titleable and thumbnailable. So if you want to see that stuff in VOD form, you can subscribe and get access to the VODs, or you can catch it live. Reason to subscribe is that like this content will end someday, right? Because I'm making basically a lot less money than I'd make as a real software developer, right? And so this content will end, but the more money I make, the later that day goes. So if you want to keep seeing it, consider it. That's all I'm saying. Thanks for watching, guys. I think we call it there. Twitch, let's find someone to raid. YouTube, peace out.